Hey everyone, Björkvin here from Audio Issues, author of Step by Step Mixing. Here's the book. Uh, uh, I'm here, as always, I'm here to help you confidently finish your mixes so that you can be proud to release your records. Welcome to Happy Hour, the hour where I drink a beer and answer your questions and have a conversation with friends from the industry. Today I'm drinking Left Hand Brewing Co. Milk Stout, the Nitro Milk Stout. Haven't tried this one before, but since it's 105 degrees in Tucson, Arizona, might as well drink a stout, a wintry beer. So let me know where you're at, what you're drinking, even if it's water or coffee. Time zones being what time zones are. It's not 5 o'clock. It's not even 5 o'clock here, actually. But cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. Today, we have a really special guest. JT Cloutier, I think, is his, if they would pronounce his last name. But, my name is Björkvin, so I get at least one pass at butchering people's names. And we're going to talk about his book and his career in being a bedroom super producer. So I'm going to add him here in a minute. But if you are not on the email list already and would like to download my mix translation cheat sheet that helps you make your mixes sound great across all speaker systems, which is a super important part of the mixing process and finishing your mixes, you should download the cheat sheet at mixfinisher.com and get on the email list and get all the other goodies that I offer to my subscribers there. Please remember to like and subscribe and do all that fun stuff if you're on YouTube. And but without further ado, I'm going to get JT on. Hello and welcome, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, sir. I'm very pleased to be part, at least for today, of the Audio Issues family.
Yeah. It's this is great. I'm really excited to have you because I read your book in about a sitting. I most of it was spent. I think it was a Saturday. I read it on the Kindle in the hot tub, and it was very, very, very awesome. I really enjoyed the entire process, how you break things down. For bedroom producers and people that you're trying to help. So let's for those that don't know you and aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a little backstory on how you got started and where you are now in your career?
Sure. So for those who read the book, obviously this is going to be a kind of a rerun of things, but I was born into a musical family. My mom always made it a point that we all had to learn an instrument. I have two siblings, a younger brother and an older sister. And luckily enough, I chose the piano. Is my voice coming across? I saw you.
Yeah. It's just you're too loud.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
And so, from a very young age, I was passionate about music, but the whole classical teaching didn't appeal to me, and I got bored very quickly of practicing runs over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And getting, excuse my French, I'm French by the way, so but. Getting beat up during the classes by my teacher because I missed, one silence there and one staccato note there. And I was like, I just want to play pop stuff. Let me just, play by ear whatever I hear on the radio. And so I quit. I quit after, I think, 6 or 7 years of classical piano. And my mom was crushed, obviously. But she's still, helped me with my dreams. And so a few years later, I got my first synthesizer. And as soon as, PCs made their way into households with internet, because at the very beginning, it wasn't easy to produce on a computer. Maybe some people who are younger in the audience won't have seen these days, but there was a time where you couldn't download a cracked program, a DAW, on the internet, and then just a bunch of free sample packs and get going with a YouTube tutorial or two. So that was actually kind of a blessing in disguise, because I really started to nerd out on MIDI, understanding how to, plug a sound module with a drum machine, with a computer, with a master keyboard, and learn all of these things. And because I didn't have enough money at that time, I was still a teenager, I couldn't buy, Sound on Sound or Music Tech or whatever the magazine was back then. So I kind of learned everything on my own, really. Even when because the time I'm describing right now, I was probably 15. That's when I started to produce. And I was more interested in learning how to produce hip hop beats. And whenever I went to the local guitar shop, they were all rock heads. So they had no idea how to, program a drum beat or sample drums on a vinyl or any of these things. So it was quite the challenge at first. And, even sampling back then was a challenge. This was prior to Giga Sampler and then Contact version 1, 2, 3, etc. So, but that kind of fostered my passion for computer and electronic music, because I had to sit there for 6 to 8 hours straight trying to figure out why there was nothing coming out of the speakers when I pressed on my keyboard,
Yeah.
And to some people that come to me for advice sometimes, and they ask, like, how do you develop a passion? Well, it took me 40 years, 25 some odd years to figure it out. But I think that you just have to spend time with it,
Yeah.
And and so that's how I got started. And then the beats became decent, and I was old enough then to go into bars and clubs. So what I would do is bring my mixtape, my beat CD with me, and I would wait until the artists got off stage, and then I would network with them. And that's how I developed my first stream of income, musical stream of income. Yeah. And but then I had to talk with my parents, and they wanted me to define a career path for myself, and I had no idea whatsoever. And my sister actually said, "Hey, you're good at drawing, you like computers, why don't you go into graphic design?" And that's what I did. And for the next 10 years, I was I graduated from college. I worked a little bit in a web design firm. I burned out because I was doing like 60 to 70 hours a week right out of college. I was learning everything all at once, and it was extremely, extremely difficult. And then I took a little break and went back to college to study user experience. And that's how I got my flair for, interfaces. If you have seen any of my contact instruments and stuff like that, I still love doing graphic design, but there was always this voice inside of my head that said, "No, JT, you need to do this music thing. You need at least to try before you pass on." So, sorry to be so dramatic, but it was it became at one point a question of life and death. Like, I was so depressed doing the graphic design stuff, and I knew it wasn't my calling or my purpose, to use one of the strongest cliches in the self-development world.
Right.
And so right around the time I was doing the graphic design work, internet had become what it is today, where you can crack anything and you can learn anything by just opening up Google or YouTube. And that's when I started to research how to make money with music online, because I wanted to harness the power of the internet, because the whole meeting artists in person was way too slow, and I couldn't get to where I wanted to be financially to ultimately quit my job and do this full time.
Right.
And so I found a few things, but my real big breakthrough was when my best friend and partner in Delicate Beats told me about this website where he sold his music, and he wasn't doing it full time, but it paid like the groceries one month, and then the apartment the next, and I was blown away. I was like, you never told me, but you actually earn more money from your music than I do, and I really hustle harder than you, so that's not fair. You got to tell me what the secret is.
Right.
And so he put me in contact with this guy who was running the website premiumbeat.com, which is it's actually a local company here in Montreal. I'm in Canada.
Yeah.
I haven't said that already. And so I called the guy up and said, listen, I'm a hip hop producer. Is there any room for this kind of music in your library? And he said, you know what? The hip hop is the website's most visited section, and it's actually the one where I think we need the most music. So it was kind of this chance encounter,
Right.
And from there, I learned the ropes, because obviously composing for media is different than composing for artists, for example. And so it took me a few years, but after I'd say 2 to 3 years, like I had a good idea of what I could achieve if I went full time. Let's say, for example, I worked 8 hours a day. I would come home, have dinner with my ex-wife now, but
Sure.
my wife, and then I would probably nerd out for 3 hours after that. So I was like, if I do 15 hours a week and I earn X amount of money, does it balance my budget if I go for 45 full-time hours of doing just music? And I'd say another 3 years after that, after I heard about Premium Beat, the site grew, my music got better, I climbed up the charts, I had a few what I call bestsellers, and then the math kind of worked out all by itself. So I said, you know what, this is the right time for me to take the leap. I did, and it's been 7 years now, and I'm working from home, living the dream.
Yeah.
That's in a nutshell what happened to me.
Yeah. Well, so tell me a little bit. So you mentioned that the first thing you did was, you went out to clubs and you networked.
Yes.
How would you have any specific tips or advice for effective networking? Because networking, people, there's a lot of people that would run the other way when they get invited to a networking event. And obviously there's not a lot of events going on right now, but but networking in general. And also you mentioned you just like called up the company, which is not something that one would think to do these days, because you get these websites and these websites look like big businesses that probably don't have any contact information. It's hard to get in touch with a real person. In my experience, it's actually usually there's, you can make things look incredibly big and successful online just with the right designed website,
Yes.
even though there might just be 3 people behind behind the email there. So I wonder if you wanted to talk a little bit about that sort of networking advice and, actually reaching out and calling people and getting in front of people, because I feel like that's a big hindrance and a big mental block for my audience.
And I think that even more for artists than any other types I've met, because I think we all naturally want our work to speak for itself, and we feel like networking is kind of begging, in a way, people to spend money on us and believe in us.
Right.
So when I was younger, let's say 15, 16 years old, I was kind of arrogant, and I was sure that my beats were the best in the world and that I didn't have to worry about anything. And I would actually approach rappers that way. I would just say, "Here's my CD. You will call me back. Thank you very much." But and that kind of worked for me. But I had a few reality checks here and there where at some point, I was on my first real professional recording project, and I was producing out of this horrible, cheap sound card, Creative Labs, if you remember those.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so, pulling out the stems out of an RCA jack, the console or the DAT machine or whatever it was, gave very poor results. And so at some point I realized that I needed to humble myself and I needed to learn from other people. And when that mindset shift happened, I guess kind of naturally, I went the opposite route where I wanted to be of service to others. And when I started to network online, I would just open up communication lines with artists, and I would just show interest. And I would just say, "Hey, your music's really cool. I'm a producer. Listen to my stuff, and if you like it, we can talk some more." So that was my easier way of showing interest in working with artists. Since then, I've just increased this willingness and this interest of understanding what their goals are, what their roadblocks are. And I think that's always in any business, the way to sell yourself. Instead of selling the solution, you want to sell your understanding of their issues, their problems.
Right.
So if it's an artist, you can talk with them about the fact that you need a big budget now to record a 12-song album. If every exclusive beat is going to cost you upwards of, I don't know, $500, any independent artists won't have that kind of money.
Right.
And we're not even talking about the bigger projects, the 20K, 40K, 80K even. So what I would say is find people who have a similar level of passion and someone you kind of look up to, because in a way you want to be proud of your work first and foremost. The money will come if you're passionate and if you stay focused, consistent, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I would say, and there's many ways you can do pro bono. You can do a small EP. Last year, I did that with someone I thought could bring me other gigs and other customers, clients. So I wrote a 5-song EP for him for free. And it was a way for me to learn a new way of working, because I hadn't done kind of I'd say electronic pop, dance project with anyone. And so, and learning from him also, because he was signed with a huge label, and I wanted to understand what it was like to submit songs to A&Rs, because people think that when you get signed, this is it. You can just throw money at the label and they'll just put out everything, which is absolutely not the case. It's even harder when you're signed to actually get songs released, unless it's a very small label. But if you're on Sony, Warner, these guys, you will have to come up with a hit for them to say, "Hey, yeah, it sounds kind of decent, and then let's see how it does." And even then they're not going to invest, $100K on marketing and billboards and whatnot.
Right.
They'll probably say, try to get independently on some playlists.
Right.
And let's see where that goes. So just to reiterate, I would say the idea is to take care of your passion, stay consistent, and then the networking thing is really about being of service to others.
Right. So how you can help, not like here's how everybody should be able to help me. It's really just being understanding of the fact that you're going out in the world with the goal of helping or finding other people's problems and helping them, and then that sooner or later will come back to get you in a good way, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And you would be surprised. Another good rule of thumb is the give, give, get. You know.
Yeah, right,
So for,
right,
for two services rendered, you ask for one in return, and then that way you don't appear to be like a leech or an opportunist of sorts.
right. Yeah, and that's that goes into a little bit about how in your book, uh, bedroom super producer. Is it how to become a bedroom super producer or just
The
bedroom super?
bedroom super
Yeah,
producer.
the bedroom super producer. Yeah, that's right. You talk a lot about how you're a content creator, and one of the best ways to do the give, give, get is through content, is by talking about issues and problems that that your audience has, and then you give that enough time so that when you ask for something in return, you're more likely to be viewed favorably, because it's the rule of reciprocity of if you give something, you're more likely to get something in return.
Absolutely. I think, well, there's two things, because in the book I refer to content creators more from the perspective of us musicians being a team player on a team that produces content. Most of my customers with the whole music for media thing are people who will put videos on YouTube. So I have to understand how they and you said it yourself, small businesses now, if they have the right design and the right feel, they'll look like they're a huge corporation when they're really just a team of three. So my mentality was, how can I give them the Apple, Google, whatever, Lay's and McDonald's type of music, but that they can afford at $40-50 a license.
Right.
And so I really started to study what these huge corporations in each of the niches, whether it be fast food, computers, cars, men's apparel, women's apparel, and I would catalog all of these styles of music, and I would even go as far as understanding what kind of song keys, tempos, scales, and then from there I would say, well, what am I good at? What can I tackle quicker to get some quick wins? And
Right.
that was one aspect. And then once I got a little bit of success with the music for media thing, I became myself a content creator, because I had amassed all of this knowledge and I wanted to share it with people, because I say that in the book. I felt like it was unfair for me to have this dream lifestyle. It doesn't have to be like you can see right here. This is just my bedroom. It is still my bedroom. Like, I don't care about mansions, cars, whatever.
Right.
Armani suit. For me, it's about freedom.
Yeah.
And so I put together this YouTube channel, and I started to do some horrible tutorials, and then some of those caught on, and I figured, you know what, they don't care about the production quality. They want to learn, and they want to see if they can do the same, use their passion to actually make money and enjoy most of their days. Because if you're stuck in a cubicle for 8 to 10 hours, it's soul sucking, and it's very, very painful. And I've been there, and it's no life, really. So I wanted to share my newfound understanding of what life could really be if you just stick to something to which you're kind of interested in and probably good at. And
Right.
so there's two different types of content creators. I just wanted to make the distinction so that.
Sure. Definitely. We have some people watching, and Gnarity says cheers. Well, cheers.
I stopped drinking, so don't.
Not a problem. Not a problem. He's from New York City. I just cracked a good old Bud Light. Chris Martin from in Virginia, drinking sweet tea. Conquest Music's got a nice cold Budweiser. Kid Sleepy's in Japan. It's 9 a.m., so there's coffee there. Gary Tobin is a great jazz musician. His band Cascadia Groove, I mixed a record of theirs. Really, really great stuff. And yeah, so feel free to chime in with any comments or questions about anything that we're talking, and we'll definitely get to them during the hour. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the difference in composing music when you're composing for media versus composing for, the traditional just writing a song to be a musician.
Right. So in my book, I make it a point to refer to songs or cues or, beats as products. And I was obviously going for the shock value of it, because a lot of musicians would be horrified to even get close to that kind of mentality. But it's really what got me where I'm at today. Let's go back in my past to where I was still selling beats to artists, but was not yet aware of the whole stock music world.
Right.
At the time, I had made my brother a partner in Delicate Beats, my kind of producer nickname and company.
Yeah.
And he had just finished his MBA, and he had this drastically different vision of what it took for me to succeed. Because I was of the idea that I would only sell my best beats to the best customer, or in my mind, who would bring more views or listen or whatever.
Right.
And I was very finicky about what kind of music I would present to who during listening sessions and all of that. And he was like, "You need to stop that shit right now." Pardon my French, but he was very hard on me, and thankfully he was, because I still am very stubborn. And but he made me realize that in this new era, it was about volume and not spending so much energy, emotional energy, on is this beat's gonna be good when turned into a song, or is that rapper is gonna screw up my precious work, or whatever it was. And so it took me a long while, but at some point I was like, you know what, I'll do whatever it takes. And so I changed this mentality, kind of elitist in a way, to where I was like, you know what, I'm going to encourage the customers who are return customers. Even if I hate their music, I'm going to share my passion with them because they believe in me. And I'm kind of losing my train of thought there. What was it again?
Why it's just the differences in composing, but I'm also very interested in sort of what your brother proposed, because it seems like he came in with like a different mindset, sort of an entrepreneurial mindset, and sort of shifted your thought process, which I find very, very important if you want to be, because unfortunately we're all brands and business owners and entrepreneurs. We just, as you said, we just have different products. In my case, my products are tutorials and memberships in my book. In your case, I believe you have sample libraries on top of your books and some training as well. So, and plus, of course, all of your beats or your composition. So I'm just curious about sort of that shift, sort of like when did you become the musicpreneur that you are today?
Okay, so I guess I was telling this little story because I wanted to put the whole thing in the context. And so I had to learn at some point to kind of stomp on my musical ego or artistic ego that was stopping me from expanding my business. And when I got into the stock music world, I had that mindset. I was ready to sell. And so I brought that mentality of volume and just keep moving forward to the table. The other aspect of it is that you cannot just compose whatever you please, put it online, and sell music. You have to understand what, and I was referring to content creators who are our customers. What do they need? How do they want to portray their business? And linking back to the whole networking thing, if you understand, let's say a small coffee shop, how do they want to portray themselves on the web? Do they want to look like Starbucks? Do they want to appear more boutique and refined, you know, with the better grains and the better approach to pouring a strong espresso?
Yeah.
And from there, who are their customers? Like, are they more women, men, children? Who are they? What do they like? Do they like folk? Do they like this super in your face EDM? Do they like hip hop? And then you can approach helping their business from there. But it's always a question of customer experience and user experience, which I have learned from another past life.
Sure.
But basically, it's just to wrap this whole thing up, if I even make sense right now. I knew that I was good at hip hop, so it's kind of columns. What am I good at? What do customers need?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how can I get quick wins?
Right.
So at that time, I was very much into self-development, and I was seeing all of these huge YouTube channels, like with millions and millions of views and subscribers, and they were using, you know, or they were ripping off people like Hans Zimmer and like this super epic orchestral stuff. So I said, why don't I start to merge hip hop with epic orchestral stuff? And that's how I got my first taste of the best-selling songs on Premium Beat. Right. And from there, I understood that creating a niche for your music by combining genres that actually cater to certain industries, and then I guess we'll get to that, but using the metadata to drive your point home, basically with the title of the song, the description,
right,
and all of that. So that's a product right there. That's not just a hip hop banger that I wanted to create. I had a strategy in mind. I had some research to back it up. And then I was using my own uniqueness to convey that into a 2.5 minute beat.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting to talk about how you mix these two different things, the cinematic orchestral stuff and then the hip hop, to create something unique. And we often talk about innovation. Innovation is taking two disparate ideas, putting them together into something new. And in your case, you just created sort of a new niche for your music. And so what would you recommend anybody who's trying to figure out what their niche should be? Maybe they have a strength, maybe it's not hip hop, maybe it's you know, traditional rock music or things of that nature. How would they go about I guess increasing their probability of success by niching down? Right.
The best way for me is to study the market. So when you're on YouTube and you get an unskippable ad, well, maybe don't go do something else. Maybe listen to the music.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you're at the movies, listen to the music during the movie, during the little quizzes at the beginning of the show, you know, or during the trailers. Or there's music everywhere, and there's music to understand why someone somewhere, a creative of some sort, bought that music to help this kind of brand.
Right.
And like I said, you need to be able to catalog these combinations of businesses and types of music. You also need to stay avant-garde, at the forefront of what is the new thing. So companies like Samsung, Apple, Google, they always have the newest, coolest thing in their ads. It's usually bands that have like 15,000 monthly listeners, but they have this one incredible gem, and then you can see like everything that they produced, and you can understand why somehow they make sense for a smartphone ad, for example, or you know, whatever it is. So being a student of the game is really important.
Totally. Bob Gardner, he's one of my Insiders members. He's a great musician, makes rock music. He has a question. Is the music composed for a stock music library where the likely customer is someone with a YouTube channel? He actually, the track that I use in the intro and outro of all my YouTube tutorials is actually one of his.
Oh, cool.
Is the music composed for a stock music library different than music for a production library where the likely customer is a TV show? So now we have these two different types of customers, So what do you think of that?
Well, hi, Bob. Thanks for the great question. I would say yes and no. If you have created a great niche that will work across many genres, for example, the whole epic orchestral hip hop or something else, that gets used in reality TV, in TV ads, and then on YouTube. So you're good. You can then approach, the bigger stock music libraries with that, but you can also go with the more boutique libraries where they'll pitch exclusively to, music directors, music supervisors, and try to get your music on TV shows. With that being said, there's not really a place for, underscore type music on, the bigger stock music library space. This works much better for TV shows where there's some dialogue and they need the music to not be overbearing. So that's one key component of understanding what kind of music will go. So that's the yes, and yes, there is a difference. Or no, there's no difference. No, the first point was no, there's no difference. This one is yes, there is actually. But with that being said, if you produce, and that's where my arrogance comes into play, is if your product, your song is undeniable, it'll work anywhere. And it has a lot of people will ask what's the best website? Well, there's no best website. There's only, the best song. And people from any website will understand that this is a very special piece of music. This is very usable for a bunch of different reasons. I'm going to purchase a license. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah. What about, talk to me about the difference between these music libraries. So I know that, what's the difference between a non-exclusive and an exclusive library, and how does one get their foot in the door of the more sort of boutique ones where you have a higher likelihood of actually getting placed in places? What kind of checklist do I have to know in order to make sure that my music doesn't get rejected outright?
Right. So the first key thing to understand is the two different contracts you've mentioned, exclusive and non-exclusive. And basically what that means with an exclusive contract is the fact that the songs you're going to provide this library are going to be only on this library. You cannot sell yourself licenses, for example. So your music is stuck on this website, for better or worse. Because we are usually just by ourselves, we don't have a team of composers and producers with us, it can become very challenging to serve a lot of different libraries, especially when you sign exclusive deals. Because in a week, let's say you can come up with 1 to 3 great songs. And because the law of e-commerce is all about volume, the long tail, you need a lot of songs. And so it is difficult to focus on just exclusive websites. But to paint a portrait, the bigger libraries, the ones that have the most traffic, are usually non-exclusive. And non-exclusive is quite the opposite of what I just described, which is you can put your songs there. You can put them on other websites that ask for, or that don't ask for exclusivity. But there's more competition.
Right.
Way more music. Therefore, your music is harder to find.
Yeah.
And I would even add that you're not going to see a whole lot of PRO money, because obviously they're going to sell cheap licenses for people who only use it to small audience online.
Right.
I think we're going to talk about. Sorry, I saw my name there, JT. I don't think it's arrogance. All right, thanks.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, Gary don't think it's arrogance. Just being yourself, having a unique voice. Yeah, no, totally true.
Okay, so I'm again trying to make this as quick and easy as possible. So there are two main contracts you sign: exclusive, non-exclusive. You have to be very aware of what you get into when you sign these contracts, because, like I said, manpower is limited, or woman power. I don't know if there are any female composers, but so that's the first thing. Then understanding a bigger website will have more competition. It will be more difficult to get your songs heard.
Right.
And then there are what I call in the book the boutique libraries, the ones that'll cater to very specific segments of the market. For example, you've mentioned it, people who will target the producers or music supervisors of reality TV, for example. So when you work with them, you need to give them the music that they need. And so you need to, again, study what reality TV uses, what kind of music. And usually it's electronic pop, hip hop, a little bit of R&B, but not too much rock, jazz, and
right.
and maybe, like the harder stuff, like the dubstep for a while was there. But
right.
So, and usually those smaller libraries will be exclusive. So not only do they have very restrictive, I'm looking for the word there, like they are very specific about the music that they need. And so not only are you only composing in one genre, but like you're not, it's, how can I say it? Me personally, I'm not really interested in working with these libraries because I want to explore. I want to, do some epic orchestral stuff one day, maybe do some funk one day, disco. I like to dabble. So,
right.
So for me, it's not interesting to have a library that will always ask for the same kind of cue from me.
Right.
And to again close out on this topic, or at least answer your question, what do you need to approach these libraries? Well, again, you need to understand who are their clients, what kind of music they need, and when you submit 2 to 3 songs, either through a SoundCloud link or an MP3, or it needs to be of broadcast ready quality. So the mix needs to be spotless. The mastering needs to be competitive. It needs to be loud, proud, without compromising, the dynamics and all of that good stuff. So you need to be ready for the big leagues.
Right. Well, yeah, that's well, I hope they get some of that information from me at Audio Issues, at least to get it up to release ready standards for sure. Yeah, it is actually, and it's fun to say. So going back to Bob's question here, and talking about the non-exclusive libraries, is one of the reasons why I reached out to Bob. It was because I was browsing one of those non-exclusive libraries, and I was just getting tired of listening to all these songs, and I was just like getting irritated by not finding something. And I just thought, well, I mean, Bob makes some pretty good music cues, and I don't need like a long song. He probably has something. And then he sent me stuff, and then we started comparing sort of mixes that he had done a year ago before he joined Insiders and before he read the book and stuff like that. And then, we meet almost weekly, and now the type of production and the type of radio readiness that his mixes have now are just, night and day. And it is really important to be able to confidently play your mix compared to just a almost a Grammy winning record, or a very, very polished professional performance, for sure. Going back to niches, Kit asks, any market for 50s, 60s style, modernized, rearranged music originals and covers? Well, I would say that you can't really do what you're doing with covers, because that's an entire can of worms when it comes to rights, I think.
Well, actually, I think I saw like a taxi ad not so long ago, and they were actually looking for covers because I
Oh,
guess
really?
they're doing like this, I don't know, the life of Elvis type of thing or whatever. But sometimes they will look for covers, um, and then I think it's more on the publishing side where the owners of the masters will make all of that money, I think.
Right. Yeah, because of the way the songwriting royalties and publishing royalties and sound recording royalties are all calculated.
Yeah, and they're there, so
Right.
you can't really make money on the back end, but you can certainly get like upfront money from a license to sell covers. Obviously, this goes back to finding a niche that works for you. If you can pump out like 200 of those, fine.
Right.
But even then, it's going to be difficult. Let's think just in terms of YouTube. Who is looking right now to build their channel up for these kinds of covers? Maybe people who have a surf channel who are looking for that old Beach Boys sound, for example, something like that.
Right.
Or my example of the coffee shop, maybe that could work, but it's this is not the norm. It's a very particular niche, and you don't hear that every day on. Well, might actually not be true. You will hear a Facebook ad in and there, here and there, with old school stuff, old school sounding stuff, but it's far less, let's say, than pop EDM and hip hop and funk. Right now is a big thing. So, and to the first point of the question, just regarding 50s, because there's covers, like 50s and 60s covers, and then there's 50s and 60s sounding cues.
Yeah.
I would say focus more on the 50s and 60s sounding music, because right now in a world where everything is made on a computer, organic sounding music with real live instruments and a really fine attention to detail in terms of the mixing and the did this person use a good spring reverb on that great guitar? These kinds of things, people don't understand them, but they know it when they hear it. So I'd say there is definitely a room for these kinds of more artistic aesthetics when it comes to the mixing side of things.
Right. Yeah, it's I lost my train of thought, but it'll come back to me. Well, one of the big things that we've already discussed is this whole, you have to think about the secondary order importance of what your customer is looking for. Like, what is the goal of the person that is going to hypothetically buy your music? That's where you should be thinking, because you want to be a step ahead of just your own needs and wants. You want to be thinking about their needs and wants. Yeah. Kurt Cummings is one of my audience issues insiders too. He actually he has a song that both me and Bob have heard. I actually mastered it for him, that I'm trying to get in front of Canadian Hockey TV for promo of the NHL return. It's called "Oh Stanley." It's a really good sort of Green Day style punk rock song about the Stanley Cup.
Okay.
So if you had to figure out how to sell a song like that, what would you do? So
I would probably, you'd have to know where they get their music from. So usually when the I'm looking for the word in English, when the credits roll at the end of the show, they'll usually tell you who the music supervisor is.
Oh yeah.
So that's one way. And if you can find the music supervisor on either IMDb or LinkedIn, you can approach them and say, hey, I'm a huge NHL fan, love the show. if ever you need music, I would be more than happy to help out. That's one way.
Right.
Um, Another way is to kind of, you can go on YouTube, for example, and if the production company, whether it's TSN or RDS in French part of Canada,
Yeah.
You can probably go into the description of certain videos that they'll post. So you go for NHL posts on YouTube, and in the description they might say where they got the music from, or so that's one way of telling, like, well, did they use the services of such and such agencies or libraries, and then get in contact with them. Obviously, being in Montreal, there's a big TV production scene, and I know how these companies operate, and they are very small companies, and they usually have very personal relationships either with libraries or composers. For the longest time, I know that there was this one guy in Montreal that did most of the stuff for RDS. So it is challenging, but and then there's also like just the hustler's way. You could contact these people through their social media and see where it goes. I would probably use LinkedIn before Facebook or YouTube.
Yeah.
Um,
Or just trying to find an email that might, I wonder how easy, because to me, I'm thinking like it's similar to when you're trying to get gigs as a band. You would just research the landscape, you would find the people, the decision makers, you would find their contact info, whether that is just the contact form of the venue itself, or whether there's a booking agent or whatever, and then you email them, and it's a lot about researching the landscape and doing the outreach, and because it's almost kind of cold calling in a certain way, but
it is absolutely cold calling.
But it's just something that has to be done sometimes, especially if you don't have an in through a third party. Obviously, a CC'd email is going to be way easier to get you in the door than anything else. But
so I'll use Flatlander's question to refer to a point I make in my book that we've already touched upon. And it's the fact that you need to develop this entrepreneur mindset.
Right.
And for me, this particular case is more of a bucket list type of thing. You wanna say that you produce the music for, the return of the NHL, but what you're really doing is pinpointing a very specific customer out there that you might never be able to reach. Instead of using this piece of music and broadcast it to a way larger audience. So by wanting to have this very, very cool placement with this one production company, you're basically closing the door to maybe hundreds of licenses that you could sell on a library, and not just for hockey, but maybe for other sports that require these kinds of punk rock cues. So again, you kind of have to go back to what makes you happy. Is it to live off of music, or is it to have this one spectacular placement?
Right.
And for myself, I did that test many, many years ago because I was using different services to pitch my hip hop beats to the bigger artists. And what I didn't know at the time was that there was absolutely 0% chance of me landing a placement, just because of the fact that records get placed because they work in a studio environment where they get this vibe of working together. And even more local artists now develop their projects the same way. They need to be in the room with the producer to feel like they were part of the composition. And so that goes back also to being of service. It's just not just the music, but it's also your input, creative input when you work with people. So personally, I completely ditched off the whole getting major placement thing, and I said, you know what? If this is what it's going to be, me selling music to YouTubers, but being free of my time, like choosing what I do on a day-to-day basis, working from home, being able to go pick up my son after school very early, not being rushed any time. That was going to be it. So that's what I chose, and by doing so, and that's how. And I think what was his name again? Bob? Or,
it was Kurt.
I'm going to be arrogant again. I think I make more money now than what I could possibly make placing songs on major projects right now, because having worked with artists that are signed on Sony and such, like big name labels and all of that, I would probably still be grinding, trying to make a name for myself. Whereas now I have my own little world on Premium Beat.
Yeah.
I do the music that I like, that I feel like will be exciting to people, that will help their businesses sound bigger, be competing with, giants on the web, and that's what I do.
Right.
And then I pick some passion projects.
Sure.
I'm currently working on my EP, but that's just on my downtime, and it's just because now I have the luxury of time. Right. But first I had to, make a sacrifice, which was, well, maybe my music's never going to be really heard on, national TV or.
Right. It's sort of like a question of like, well, do you want the accolades or do you want the freedom? I'll honestly, sometimes that can coincide, but which is more important to you? Is it the freedom to do whatever you want whenever you want, or do you really want name recognition? I have always said
the glory.
Sorry?
The money or the glory. There's It's one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I've often said, like, I just want, I would be super happy if I got an email someday from like a Grammy winner that thanked me for helping him get to a point where his productions got a Grammy. I'm not necessarily like, obviously it would be great to get a Grammy, but I'd rather have been instrumental in helping somebody else out.
Yeah, well, again, see, so you like being a team player and being part of a bigger, like having a smaller slice of a bigger pie, and that's absolutely honorable, and that works. Personally, when it comes to music, I'm more of a, like, I like doing my things my own way, so I accept it. I have a great friend who's also a composer on Premium Beat, and he's making a killing on there, but his real passion is working with artists and teams of producers. Sometimes there'll be 3 and 4 producers lining up in the studio with laptops, and he likes to produce that way. Right. And so he makes more time now that he has the freedom to take on those projects.
Right.
So yeah, I was going to say, you just have to be, and that's a great piece of advice I got from Gary Vee. And he said, self-awareness is like everything. Once you really know who you are, what makes you tick, what makes your soul happy, then you can really focus on defining your goals and picking the right markets, defining your product, and all that good stuff.
Right. Bob has a follow-up to his question from earlier. You said that stock music libraries don't have much use for underscore. What was there a particular meaning behind that?
Okay, so let's say, for example, you want to create the music for Grey's Anatomy's next season, and during the operation scenes, there's this very tense, brooding, low bass kind of. That's what we call an underscore. It's music that will be more in the background. So there might not be a whole lot of percussions, for example. There might not be like a lead line or a main melody. It's more about rhythms and little chords and stuff like that. And so if you want to do the TV stuff, that's a great expertise to develop, underscore. But if you want to have music like in the next Lipton iced tea commercial, well, you might need some whistling or some catchy little
Yeah.
melody on top of that.
Right.
So
Right.
it completely different types of compositions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly people make careers out of underscore. You're probably you're maybe familiar with one of my actual compatriots. Her name is Hildur Guðnadóttir, who basically won all of the awards last year for best composer. She did the music for the Joker movie and for Chernobyl.
Okay.
And so she just and she's from my hometown, and her brother
Really?
is in a band, Agent Fresco, which is sort of a prog rock group that I used to do live sound for. So Iceland's a small country, so it's like a fun little anecdote there. But her entire motif in Chernobyl, Joker's slightly different, but in Chernobyl, you almost don't notice the music because it's all sort of just like these ambient, tense textures. And it's just, well, obviously award winning, but really interesting how like that's a particular thing that people need.
Yeah. And there's absolutely a market for that. Not so long ago, and by the way, tell her that the Joker score was also really, really good. I mean, like the sound design, the way she uses the strings and all of that it's very unique.
Yeah.
But if we go back to underscore music, a big company called Lens Distortion, I think,
Okay.
that creates like filters for photographs and all of that. They started to sell underscore packs. And so they understood that there was a need in the market for like more the people who do documentaries, for example, the people who produce big interviews. This is where the underscore type of music will be needed. Obviously, and again, I always compare it to food. A pop folk jingle with whistling on top of it is much more like a Big Mac than the underscore will be, let's say, maybe not caviar, but it's much more refined, and there are far less people who will need that kind of music for their projects. Again, it's a question of volume. So my advice would be, try to master a style of music that has a bigger audience first, because the idea is to always free up time. And I know you wanted to talk about what a day.
Yeah, let's go into that.
It could be a great segue to dive into that.
Yeah. What's your day-to-day, what's your work week look like as
Okay.
a free to do what you want producer?
So it's kind of a tough one for me because I come from a small and medium company mindset where you can't just bill time to a customer you're not working on their projects for. You know what I mean? Like, you need to be profitable as an employee.
Right.
So when
revenue per employee, right? That's
say again, sorry?
The revenue per employee metric.
Yeah. Well, when you start to operate your own business, and I'm sure you will know, this becomes even more crucial because you can't just spend 8 hours in a day on a song that has a small audience and that might be a tough sell to any library.
Right.
Like, I would personally, prioritize. So let's go back to the initial question. What does my day look like? First of all, I use the evenings to focus on my to-do lists with an S, because I have 3 to 4 different to-do lists that are ever changing. And one is for my sample business, delicatebeats.com. One is for my library work. One is for some other startups that I have with fellow composers. And finally, one is for like my personal life, whatever I want to achieve. Let's say, for example, last year, I invested in 2 different mentorship programs where they helped me with certain areas of my business. And so I had homework for that to do, and stuff to deliver on time, basically. So in the evenings, I will make sure that I'm aligned with what is my quickest win. And so when I wake up in the morning, if I don't have my son with me, I will open up the computer usually around 7:30, and I will usually use the, the the block of hours between 7 and 11 to write, compose brand new music, because that's where my brain's not filled up yet with all of the, the bullshit of life.
Right.
You know,
Right.
the stresses, the arguments you haven't resolved or have lost to your girlfriend or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm most productive. That's where I'll start my newer cues. Then around 11:30, usually what I'll do is work out. I'll probably go outside right now because it's summertime in Canada. When it's winter time, I'll do it inside, but just so that I keep the juices flowing and I'm ready to attack the afternoon, not being sluggish from a heavy meal or anything like that. So
Right.
usually I'll work out, and my lunch break is 2 hours. So an hour of working out and an hour of eating, reading, maybe watching a tutorial on YouTube or something like that.
Right.
Then I go back, and then it always goes back to priorities. Whatever is more crucial to my bottom line or top line, I never understand which is which, but what is going to make me richer tomorrow? So developing products for delicatebeats.com is a project of passion. Therefore, it's never a priority. It's always on my downtime. So my most likely priority would be to finish up my cues, mix them, master them, submit them, and create all of the different edits that they need.
Right.
So when you sell a song on a stock music library marketplace, you need the full song, which is roughly 2 minutes, 2 minutes and a half. You need a 60-second, 30-second, 15 seconds, sometimes a stinger, like a 5-second visual logo type thing.
Right.
And then on Premium Beat, they need loops and stems. So all of that needs to be mixed, mastered, shipped, ready to go. So usually that's the more easy on the brain stuff that I'll keep for the afternoon. And that's my segue to go back to my mentality of being profitable.
Right.
In the evening, I study. Right now, I'm studying art orchestration. So on my downtime, I'm still kind of working, learning new ways to voice chords, learning how to harmonize melodies in different ways, how to mix and use the DAW and the plugins to create orchestral mock-ups that are very, very, very convincing, for example. So where I'm getting at is being efficient with your energy. Because as you can see right now, I've laid out kind of a 12-hour day.
Right.
And for 6 years and 3/4, I was just emptying the gas tank like crazy. Because at the beginning, I was very pumped, living this new lifestyle, always being at home. I had a lot of energy, but at some point, I burned out again. And so I had to realize that even what I call the downtime and relaxing stuff, watching tutorials, learning stuff, is still work, is still demanding, and will eventually tire you. So I had to be more, how can I put it, more gentle on myself and compartmentalize even more what I do that is really, really business, that might be beneficial in the mid to long term for the business. And did I still plan something that is absolutely just for fun, like going out with friends to have a drink, social days?
Get that balance a little bit.
Yeah, because I lost that, absolutely. And it's a very easy thing to do. To just focus on your musical obsession, and so The workout regimen was one way of taking care of myself. Then I'm a big advocate of clean eating, because for the longest time I was eating stuff that did not give me the stamina in the studio that I needed.
Right.
You know it better than anyone. If you're mixing a record for 6 hours straight, you will need to, yeah, you made that, you will need
Yeah.
to ease
Yeah.
up.
I was mixing
Maybe
today, and it's always bad on the back here.
yeah, go out, maybe do some yoga, whatever it is, but you need to uh, put something on your agenda that takes care of yourself and
Right.
your well-being.
Yeah, I always start the day with a run and yoga and meditation and some light reading, and like setting that as a priority really sets up your day in a good way. So I'm a huge proponent of good routines, so that just creating these habits that just lead to success, just because of the way that you handle the habits, and how one habit triggers another, and the next thing you know, you've at least done something good for yourself without really trying, because you're just doing these things on autopilot after a while.
Yeah, as you just said, even if you write, let's say, 15 seconds of horrible music, but you've worked out, you've eaten well, you feel somewhat relaxed at the end of the day, ready for another one tomorrow,
Right.
and you do this wrapping up of your day, you can still feel like a winner, having done all of these other things. And
Right.
so that's what I'm trying to achieve right now. And I'm absolutely at the beginning of my journey in terms of taking care of myself. In the book, I don't go in too much detail, but I've battled personally with, illness, depression, and I'm getting through that now. But having all these breakthroughs right now with health and wellness and fitness, I realized just how my brain was impaired by my life choices.
Right.
If you think that you can write a masterpiece hungover, well,
Yeah.
no, I mean,
You've got another thing coming for sure. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah, if there's one thing that really destroys your day and zaps your energy, is a hangover, even a small one, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes, we especially in the computer age, we feel like it's only the technical aspect that will get us where we want to go.
Yeah,
And I think that it would be a good moment to talk more about mindset, because
definitely.
when I started to see myself as an entrepreneur, I very quickly realized that my mindset was very, very poor. And I had this mentor, maybe you know him, Tom Hess. He's a great guitarist, and he has this online mentoring program.
Okay.
And so he was talking about losing the loser mentality. This
Right.
voice in your head that always tells you, well, this guy over there is way better than you, earns more money, looks
Right.
better, this, that, the other. And it's
And
a quest to get rid of that inner dialogue.
Right.
As artists, it comes from a place of insecurity, and that's fine. I mean, the more the insecure the artist is, probably the more creative and spectacular he or she is going to be. And that's just the way it is. Because the more you ache, the more you have this rage to create beautiful works of art.
Yeah.
To have people tell you it's okay, you're a good person, we like what you do.
Yeah.
And so,
And the thing about the comparison syndrome, of comparing yourself to somebody else who's, better and bigger and stronger and faster in every way, is that they're also comparing themselves to somebody else that's better and bigger and faster in any way. So it's much easier to just try to be better than you were yesterday.
wow, that's the best way to put it. I couldn't agree more. And to that point also, it's like any it's like anything that you want to have a positive impact on your life. Creating a habit takes I personally would say a lot of gurus will say 21 days, but that's bullshit. I
Right,
think
right,
personally, I think it's 6 months minimum. Whether it be, starting to meditate 5 minutes a day, or
right.
getting a good run in the morning 5 days a week. You know,
Yeah,
you might be able to do it for 2 to 3 months, and then you'll slack off. And that's the key there, is to understand that you slacked off, but you need to get back in line, and go back to working on yourself. But and to my point about technology, is that you can compress that kick drum as better as anyone, or as good as anyone. But if your mindset sucks, you won't have the energy and willingness to go back and do more. If in your head you're like, you're a worthless piece of X, Y, Z.
right, right. Yeah, there's this book, I'm trying to look it up, that talks about that. Yeah, I think it's Finished by John Acuff, and it talks about this. You try to do, I'm going to do this every day, and then you fail on day 15, and then you're like, can't do it anymore, and then you just completely stop, instead of just giving yourself a break that day and starting again, the day after.
Yeah.
Uh, it's
Another great one is The War of Art.
Yeah, definitely. Really good one.
That one literally changed my life, because the way he describes, writing in the morning,
Yeah,
and it absolutely applies to musicians, where if you make it a point to just write something every day at your peak hour, your most creative hour, something magical will happen at some point. You never know when. He calls it the what is it? Those little magical creatures that give you inspiration. I forgot
Muses.
the nymphs.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
the nymphs of inspiration. You never know when they're coming, but if they know that you've spent X amount of hours in the studio, they eventually will reward you by some happy accident. In one session, you will, put an EQ in some weird way, and it'll sound completely new and innovative, and then you'll get a massive surge of ideas for that particular cue, or for a bunch of different cues, and then you work from there, and again put in the hours until the next blessing comes along. I don't want to get too religious or spiritual, but I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
creativity works in mysterious ways. Like, it does not come every day, so you need to. Judging from The War of Art, in my personal experience, it's all about being there, so that if lightning strikes, you're ready to.
Right. And
Um,
I I consider myself predominantly, so like my creative outlet is writing, whether it's writing the books or writing just kind of stories and articles in general. And it definitely is hard to sit down every day and do something. But and sometimes you have a hard time starting, but as long as that's why it's always good to edit some of your previous work to start, because then you're just like kind of reading and you're like, oh, I'm gonna edit this word, I'm gonna edit that word. And then sooner or later you're like, oh, I'm just gonna write this paragraph here real quick. Oh, and this ties into this other thing here. And now you're off. Now your juices are flowing, right?
exactly.
And so like getting kind of tricking yourself to start creating, is a good way of doing it. And I'm sure like you have methods of doing that. Maybe, oh, I'll just do a 4 on the floor beat here, and then or I'll do some quick mixing on this demo that I was doing yesterday, and then sooner or later you're in it.
Exactly. That's exactly how it happens. You put a few random loops.
Yeah,
You just put it in a loop, and then you walk around in the apartment, in my case, and that's the beautiful thing about the human brain, is it's a pattern machine. It'll
right,
hear stuff and link things together that don't even exist yet, and so.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, Seth Godin always talks about how his job is to notice things. And as writers or creators, a lot of it is just, we're tuning our thoughts or our brain or mind to notice things. And one of those things would obviously be patterns within our own work, but also patterns and things that are reoccurring. For instance, just noticing that, oh, there's a lot of ukulele in music these days. Maybe I should put a ukulele on some of my beats or whatnot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that you started writing just because it's easier sometimes to just switch off to a completely different task than to just keep your head down and go forward on something that does not in the moment work for you.
Right.
So for you, I'm sure that writing is a great way to still keep your brain in motion, but free yourself from maybe a mix that is not exactly where you want it to be just yet, and
Right.
then start to feel like you're getting a bit tired. So instead of just taking a nap and taking the easy way out, you just work on another branch of your business.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have a few questions here, and then we'll start wrapping up in a little bit. But let's get some last minute questions here. Ray asks, "How do you do your masters? Software? Do you do your own mastering?"
Okay.
Um,
So personally, I think that everything happens during the mix phase. Um, it's a big misconception in my humble opinion that a master is really where the magic happens. I think
yeah.
that getting the crucial balance in your panning, your EQing, like the right frequency separation and all of that stuff, and then the dynamics if you work with live instruments. In my case, I work a lot of samples, so I don't compress a whole lot of things.
Right.
And so what I do, and I have this on my YouTube channel, is I use automated mastering services. And so a lot of people bash on Lander and all of
Yeah.
these automated services, but what they are incredible tools to tell you if your mix sucks or not.
Right. Right.
So what I used to do, I used to work with Lander, and then I switched to Aria, which is
Yeah.
the same concept, but with apparently this analog outboard gear. And there's a
Right.
great difference in sound quality. But basically what I do is I'll do anywhere between 3 to 7 to 10 passes on my mixes, tweaking stuff. And then I'll get one first mix in the Aria. And from there, I'll listen to it, on my monitors, my headphones, my earbuds, my iPhone stuff, my car.
Right.
I'll always do it. Sometimes the mix is just great, but most of the times I'll pick up certain like ear tiring frequencies in like the bad earphones, earbuds, and in the car it's especially good to know if it's bass heavy and drums heavy. At least in my car. So, and then I'll go back and I'll do a bunch of different passes, and that's what I'll do. The idea is not so much about the technology again. It's about workflow and speed. Because for me, if I wanted, like, I know how to master. I've watched countless tutorials. I've read books. But at the end of the day, I get insecure and I always feel like I have to push my master too hard. I wreck my mix. And at some point I was like, you know what? My time is better invested in composition and then mixing than in mastering. So I just developed a workaround using these services to improve my mixes. And when Aria came in, like, personally, I think that it sounds amazing. And I think that my songs are very, very, very competitive. Therefore, I've never needed or felt the need to get better at mastering.
Right.
So,
well, yeah. No, I mean, like, you're absolutely right in the sense that you want to make most of the big decisions in the mixing phase. Mastering is really just a little extra polish. It shouldn't be any giant. It should not transform your song in any way. It's just make what's good about it better, and
yeah.
maybe take out, the occasional muddy frequency or harshness or whatnot. Right.
The better my mix is, the closer it is, like, Aria is to just putting a limiter and
Right.
maybe reducing the volume by 3 dBs. Like, that's and I don't expect now. When I was younger, I would expect to send a beat to a mastering engineer, and it would sound like a totally different piece of music. And
Right.
I'm not excited by that. And now I'm very specific about also getting my catalog sounding pretty much even across the board.
Right.
So that's why I use the same mastering engineer,
Right.
even if it's a robot all the time. And like I said, like the differentiator is really at the mixing stage where I get creative. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I
that
do
said,
own all of
huh?
these plugins. I do own Ozone and all these plugins, but
Right. Right.
I
Yeah. I mean, that said, I did start making a mastering course for my students today that is potentially out in July, but it's the same thing. I still talk about, this is what you do to a really, really good mix. I can't teach you how to master your mix and transform or master a mix that's not great. I'll teach you how to make it loud and competitive. So
so if I can just help you sell that thing for a second, I would say, especially when you get started and maybe your revenue is not where you can afford, $100 a month worth of mastering, I would absolutely get as good as I could possibly become at mastering my own tracks. Because at
right,
first you will need to spend as little money upfront as possible to maximize your revenue. And that's again goes to that entrepreneurial mindset that you have to develop is
right,
where do I benefit my business most?
right.
And so you
I've
need
always
to get rid of all the tasks that someone could do better in shorter amount of time.
right. Yeah, I've always found that, especially when you're starting out, you don't have any money, but you have a lot of time. So you have to teach yourself how to do a lot of things. But it's also beneficial to know how to do almost everything. Just if only because knowledge is power in a lot of ways. But it's also because once you get the money to be able to hire and outsource some tasks, you know exactly how they're done. So you know better how to actually delegate the tasks because you are intimately familiar with the process. You aren't asking somebody to do something you don't know how to do. You're asking them to do something because that's now their specialty and not yours.
100% agreed. I'll show you something real quick. Um, you see those guitars and bass right there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I once learned to play those instruments. Like I've taken guitar classes, and my best friend, who's my partner in the delicatebeats.com business, he's a virtuoso bassist, and so he taught me bass. But at some point, I had the luxury of investing in my compositions, and so I started to hire musicians for my stock music stuff. But the big differentiator, because you can hire a great session player, but if you don't know how to guide them, they will do horrible work. And because I knew, um, I and again, I talk a lot about cataloging, but I have a great understanding of what makes the greatest riffs in history, why they are great, basically, And I've listened across all genres, like from the Doobie Brothers to Guns N' Roses to I'm a hip hop head, but still I have this um, vocabulary, if you will, musical vocabulary. So when I hire a guitar player, a flute player, or a horn player, I can reference very specific recordings, very specific playing styles, very specific riffs that I would like them to emulate. And so, to your point, where knowledge is power, again, if to go back, if you know how to master, you can tell if you got ripped off by
Right.
a mastering engineer that charges upwards of $200 a song,
Right. Right.
because you've done the work, and if their job is spectacular or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Well, cool. We're nearing the hour and a half mark here. I think it's time for me to make some eggplant parm for my wife, and I wanted to end with just what would you recommend to someone getting started in this particular aspect of it? So I'm talking about someone who already has songs, but is trying to figure out sort of the entrepreneurial landscape.
Okay. Um, I will be tough on the crowd right now, but I would say be open to the idea of reworking your stuff. Let's say you're a great guitar player, but the way you arrange your music is not very 2020 sounding. Be willing to learn ways to program drums in a certain way, or learn sound design with a software synthesizer such as Omnisphere or Serum, just to give a new spin to, because great music is great music. Like great chords with a great melody can be arranged hundreds of ways.
Right.
But you have to be able to understand what is the sound of the moment and kind of cater to that. You don't have to go all the way and recompose and redo everything, but if you could, spice up your compositions here and there to modernize them, that would be a great way. Then I would obviously take my 3 best songs, and I would also, like I said in the book, take a 1-month membership on musiclibraryreport.com. This is the Bible. This is where all of the libraries are listed. You can really get to know these libraries, like what kind of contracts do they have you sign, what's the split on revenues, all of that stuff. And then you can get on the forums to know like which library would be more suitable for these kinds of songs, for example. And then you talk with people of the industry who are there to help. Honestly, the community at musiclibraryreport.com is amazing. It's been a huge blessing at the beginning of my career. And honestly, I'm not paid by anyone over there. It's just that if you want to get into library music, stock music, you absolutely need to pay them a visit and see what's out there. And so work on your music, then find a home for that music, then develop your relationship with the library. Ask questions, ask them what they need, ask them what customers require or request in terms of music, and see if that's a style you could start to master in your downtime. You still do your rock, folk, whatever it is that you specialize in, and then you start to add more tools to your arsenal.
Totally.
Because as you've said, some of these companies look like they're huge corporations, but they're really like tiny companies, 3 to 5 employees.
Right.
And so if they remember you because you've shown that you are hungry, because a lot of people will just pour content on their website but not really show any love to the company. Like me personally, even with premiumbeat.com, I have very friendly email chats with people who work there. Right. And I make it a point to show that I'm here to help. Like not so long ago, I remade completely the mix to a few songs, and I apologize, saying, I know I'm making you work more hours, but I really truly feel like that's going to benefit your customers by having a better mix that'll sit better with the dialogue or voiceovers. Right. And I was surprised because she was like, you would be surprised how few of you guys do care like that.
Right.
And so the next time I submit a track, what do you think she's going to think?
Yeah, you've got so much goodwill just from creating a relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, and that helps. The same with another company I won't mention because I want to make it a point that it's not about the website, it's about you, your product.
Yeah, your goal, your mission.
I had the same kinds of discussions with the owners. Anyway, at some point they wrote me an email saying, "Hey, we love that song. If you can get more of those for us, it would be terrific." You go like that, and that's the essence of networking I was referring to at the beginning, where you're just an easy guy or woman to work with, and people human beings, they connect to other human beings. They don't like to be or deal with the faceless corporation.
Right.
Okay, so just to wrap this up really quickly, so once you've made some great bonds and relationships with these people, then you can expand to more libraries, or maybe go for more boutique libraries that cater to reality TV, for example, or but you need to focus first on your product, make sure that it's broadcast ready, and then depending on the number of songs, you could say, if someone right now in the chat room has 200 songs, it's very easy to chop that up in the blocks of 50 songs and say, okay, these 50 folk songs I'm gonna send to this company. Then these pop songs are gonna work wonders on Audio Jungle or Pond 5 or whatever it is. And then you go like that. If you don't focus on your music, make it undeniable, and then the doors will open.
Right, for sure.
And finally, work on yourself. Be gentle to yourself so that you can stay in that game for 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. And don't skip the commercials. Listen to the commercials.
Yes, be a student of the game. So important. Even today, you know, I know I'm going on forever here.
Oh,
but
that's fine. That's fine.
When I start a writing session, like when I feel like I have my 7 to 11 clear, like the highway is open for me, I usually open YouTube, Spotify, and I listen for at least 30 minutes. What's on right now? Like what's popping?
Right.
What is Coca-Cola using in their like little documentary piece that they put on their channel? What is Dove using? What is you know, I go into all of these different categories, and I'll say, okay, so Dove right now is really into these very minimalistic piano and strings arrangements. Do I want to spend 4 hours of my day learning to put together these great sounding cues like that? Because personally, it's not my forte. I'm more from a production angle, therefore I need more stuff to convey my idea. So just a string and piano piece for me is kind of difficult to write, but sometimes I'll put in the work and try to diversify my like what I can offer, like my offering. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and well, Bob says thanks, JT. Love the book. I appreciate your time. Actually, the first person to talk, the first person I told about your book was Bob, but he had already read it. So,
Wow, thank you, Bob.
So if you haven't read the book already, The Bedroom Super Producer, there's a link in the description on YouTube and on Facebook, I believe, too. So just go grab it on Amazon. It's a great read. It's very, very, very good. Highly, highly recommended. So, and it seems like Ray is going to go buy it. So, so at least you made some sales.
Yeah, one sitting, you said. So
yeah, definitely.
You can't lose. Yeah. If you hate it, it took you like half a day.
Yeah, and absolutely worth your time. So,
hey, listen, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me. It was I can go on for days about these things. So it was
you'll have to just come back.
Pleasure. Thank you to the whole family, Bob, and everything that had amazing questions.
Yeah, cool.
So hopefully this was of any help to you guys in following your dreams, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? It's about your life that is meaningful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's it for our show today. Hope you found this useful. Always like and subscribe, and then go check out The Bedroom Super Producer on Amazon. And if you want my mixed translation cheat sheet, if you aren't on the email list already, go to mixfinisher.com and download it there. It'll help you make your mixes broadcast ready and help you finish your mixes so that you can be confident in that they stand up to other songs on the radio or on other stock libraries. All right, take it easy. Have a good night.